Hey guys, welcome to SAMtuts. My name is anna-mart, or Sam for short. Today we'll be starting with a brand new Blender series for complete beginners. I will cover all of the basics of what you need to know to start. This first episode is going to be a bit longer because I have to explain exactly how the interface and commands work, but the rest will definitely be shorter. Let's go! Let's quickly go over the main elements we'll be covering in this 6-part series. Firstly, I will show you some basic modeling techniques, and we will start by modeling the frying pan and the egg. In part 2, we will be covering some basic materials and how to use material nodes. Part 3 will be about simple rigging so that we can animate our objects in a later video. In part 4, we will animate our models. Part 5 will be covering 2 topics, setting up the scene as well as texturing it. In the final episode of the series, we will learn how to render some cool shots as well as a video file animation. This tutorial is sponsored by Vernon Lowe MedAid. His YouTube channel has extensive tutorials and explanations on medicine. Dr. V. Lowe specializes in clinical hematology and has given lectures all over the world. So if you or someone you know is a doctor or medical student, go check out his channel. I'll leave a link in the description below. Let's get into the first part of the video. When you open up Blender for the very first time, this is the screen that you will see, and this splash screen is always going to be there, but the images change from time to time. And to remove that, you just click anywhere else on the screen. I'm just quickly going to go over how to move yourself around in the screen and how to move other objects around in 3D space. So the first one, how to move yourself around. So let's say I want to go to the other side of this cube. To do that, you click the middle mouse button and drag, and then you will be able to orbit around the scene. Now that we know how to orbit, we also want to know how to move around. So let's say I have 2 objects. One is over there, and I'm busy with this one, but I want to get over there. So what I do is I have to pan. To pan, you need to click Shift and then the middle mouse button and then drag, and then you'll be able to move yourself around in the 3D space. Okay. So that is the basics of how to move yourself around, and with these 2 commands you can go anywhere you want. And the last thing is how to move forwards and backwards, or basically to zoom. You just scroll in and out with your scroll wheel or the middle mouse button. The second thing is how to move other 3D objects around in the scene. So with this default cube, I will show you how to do the 3 basic movements. The first one is you want to move the cube around. For every command, there is a button you can click somewhere, but there are also hotkeys or shortcuts, and I prefer to use the shortcuts because they make everything much faster. But for the first 3 commands, I will show you where the buttons are, and then I'll show you what the hotkeys are, and then as we go along in the video, the hotkeys will become second nature to you. So the first one is grab or move. So you can either go to this left and you will see the toolbar, and you can click on these 4 arrows, and then this tool will come up which will enable you to move the cube on these 3 axes: the x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. But I prefer to use the hotkey G. Press G for grab and you move your mouse around. You don't have to click anything else, only move your mouse, then the cube will be stuck to your cursor. And to cancel the movement, you just right click, but to make the movement permanent, you left click, and then it'll stop. You can also move around on specific axes, so you press G and then the axis you want to move around on. So either Z, up and down, X, or Y. The second thing we want to do is rotate. In the toolbar you can see this these circle arrows, and you can click on that, and then that will enable you to rotate your cube in any one of these directions. So if you click on a certain circle or loop, then it'll only turn on that axis, but if you click anywhere else on the circle, you can turn it anywhere you want. But the hotkey that we use instead of this is R for rotate. So just click R and then it'll rotate. And to rotate on a certain axis, you click R and then the name of the axis. So Z, X, and Y. The last thing we want to do is scale. So you either click on this button in the toolbar, then you will be able to scale it in any direction to basically make it bigger or smaller. or you can click anywhere else and scale the whole object at the same time. And the hotkey for this is S for scale. So then you can just scale it like that, and as you already know, by this time you can scale it on a certain axis by pressing the name of the axis. So SZ, SX, or SY. Those are the three basic movements that we use to deform objects in Blender and to move them around. And you might have seen these other two things hanging around here. This is a light and this is a camera, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's get into the actual fun stuff now. So we're going to start with our modeling project. So the first thing we want to do is delete the default cube. Either do that by pressing delete, or you can do that by pressing X and then delete. And if you were wondering, if you want to undo any action, you just press Ctrl Z. Okay. The thing that we're going to do for this video is make this pan and this egg. So this is all that we're going to do for the first video, but stay tuned, and then at the end of the video I'll give you quick tips and show you how to make some kitchen appliances, a sink and a stove, which you'll be able to use in our final render, which will make the image look really cool. So let's start with the pan. The first thing we want to do is make a new object, and to do that we press Shift A. Then this toolbar will come up, and then you want to go to Mesh and then Circle. So a mesh is any 3D object that you make or add to your screen, and then you call it a mesh. So this circle is our first mesh, and this will become our frying pan. So if you want to edit or change an object, which is really common in 3D, what you want to do is go into edit mode, and to do that you make sure you click on the object and then you press tab, which is on the left hand side of your keyboard, and then all these dots will appear on the rim of the object. So each dot is called a vertex, and they are basically the points that make out the mesh. And if you go to the upper left corner, you can see there are three buttons. The first one will put you in vertex mode, as we are now. The second one put you in edge mode. Then you will be able to click between two vertices, and then the last one is face mode, but we don't have any faces yet because they are 4 or more vertices. So if you go back into vertex mode, if you select all of the vertices at once, you click A, and then they will all be selected. And to create a face, you click F. F for face. It will join all of them together into a face, and this will be the bottom of our pan. So if you accidentally click somewhere else and you deselect all of the vertices, you can either click A again, or you can put your cursor over one of the vertices, press Alt, and then click on it, and that will select the whole loop of vertices. Alright, so now let's get into some basic commands that will enable us to do modeling. So we already have all of these vertices selected, so now we want to extrude them. To extrude them, we press E for extrude, and this will basically stretch out the object. To cancel the movement of the vertices, just press on the right side of your mouse. They're still there, but you can't see them because they're overlapping with the others. So then you press S to scale them out. And now another important thing that you need to remember is that you want to go into certain views sometimes. So I can't really manually go into a perfect side view, but to do that you can go to the number pad on the right side of your keyboard and press 1, which will give me a perfect front view. If I press 3, it will give me a side view. If I press 7, it will give me a top view. So let's go into front view 1 for now. And then we want to move all of these vertices that we just extruded upwards, because a pan has a hollow side. So you press G to move them, and then Z for up. Okay, so now we're seeing something happening here. But the problem is we have a face covering the top of the frying pan, and that's not going to work because it needs to be hollow. So now we can go into face select mode in the upper left corner, and then press X for delete and then faces. Now you can see we have a nice hollow object. Go back into vertex mode and then select the upper rim by hovering your mouse over a vertex, holding down Alt and then selecting it. Go back into front view with number pad 1 and then shape your object a little bit better. So you can press G and Z to move it up or down a bit, and then we want to extrude it again. So we press E and then I'm going to press Z to make sure it goes directly upwards, and then I'm going to scale it out again so that it makes a nice pan shape. I'm going to do that again, extrude and then Z for upwards. So I'll scale it out again, move it down a bit. Right, I think that looks like a good pan shape. I think I might add another extrusion up here. Yeah, let's extrude it once more and scale it out a bit. Okay, there we go. So now we have our pan. It looks pretty good. The problem is it's about as thin as a paper, and that's not very effective. We're going to get into a new thing now, which is called a modifier. So if you go into the right hand side of your screen, you will see this tab over here. And then if you go down the little pictures on the side, you will find one that has a range on it. So if you click on the range, you will see an option that says add modifier. So click on that, and then you want to click on solidify, which is in the generate tab. Okay, so this will enable us to make it a little bit thicker so that it will be more like a pan. And you can see that it is a little bit thicker. You can't really see it that well, but it is a little bit thicker. So to make it even more thick, we go to the thickness option, and then we either click on it and slide it, because it's called a slider, or you can press the arrows to incrementally make it thicker or thinner. I think this maybe 0.05 is good, looks good for me. You do not have to follow me exactly, you can do it as you like, but I think I'm going to go with 0.05. The problem now is that we can only edit the outside of this mesh, because what a modifier does, it basically pastes another deform on top of the mesh you already have. This is amazing because you can always change it later. If you don't like it, you can make it thicker or thinner, or you can take it away. But the problem is we want to edit the inside as well. So we're going to click apply. You can never change this again. It gives me an error saying I cannot apply it in edit mode. So I just click tab to get back into object mode, then apply it, and then go back into edit mode. Now you can see that you can edit the inside and the outside of the mesh. So let's go back into front view. You can see that the top rim of the pan is slightly upwards, but we want it to be flat. To make it flat, we want to select the whole top of the pan, but if I select this like that, by just clicking and dragging, you can see that it only selects one half of the pan, but we want to go all the way through. To do that, you can go into wireframe mode by pressing Z and then clicking on the wireframe option. So now we can select the whole top of the mesh, and then you can see the whole rim is selected. What we want to do now to get them to be flat and in line with each other, you press S to scale them, and then Z for Z axis, and then 0, and then it will basically put them in line on the Z axis, which will make them completely flat. And to go out of wireframe mode, press Z again and press on solid. Okay, so I think this pan looks pretty good. Let's go on to the handle. Okay, now we are going to make the handle. We're going to need a new shape for this, and it's going to look something like this in the end. It's a simple shape, but it's pretty fun to make. So we already have this pan, but we want to hide this so that it doesn't get in the way while we are making the handle. So you click on it and then you press H for hide, and then it'll be gone, but don't worry, you can get it back again. Just press Alt H to undo the hide action. So then it'll unhide everything that you've hidden. So let's just hide that for now. And let's make the handle. So to do that, we are going to start with a sphere. So we have to make another mesh. So Shift A, and then Mesh, and UV Sphere. Okay, so then we have this pretty cool looking ball sphere thing. And now we want to flatten it so that it's more in a handle shape. So we're going to scale it on the Z axis. Okay, we're going to flatten it until it's nice and thin. I think that's good. And then we want to stretch it out on the X axis so that it's a little bit longer. So I'm going to scale it on the X axis. That looks good for now. But the problem is, if we go into top view with 7, you can see that it's an oval shape. It's not a round shape. So we want to scale it on the Y axis as well. So S, Y, and then you can make it thinner right there. That looks good to me. Just adjust that a little bit, make it a little thicker on the Z axis. Okay, that looks good. Now we want to flatten the end of the handle so that we can attach it to the pan on the one side, and so that it doesn't have this weird point on the other side. Looks like one of those air balloon things that they used to use in the old days. Anyways, so we're going to go into edit mode by pressing tab, and now you can see all of the vertices of this weirdly shapen sphere now. I'm going to start with the left hand side first. So if you can remember how to go into wireframe mode, you press Z and then wireframe, and you can see all the way through the sphere. Okay, so we're going to select by clicking and dragging this part, and then we're going to press S to scale it on the X axis, and then 0 to put them all in line, and then enter. And we're going to get this shape. So we go back into solid view by pressing Z, then solid, and then we want to look directly from this side. So we're going to side view by pressing 3, but we're on the wrong side now. So we're pressing 9 to go to the opposite side. This is all on the number pad now. Now we can see this part, but it's weird and blocky, kind of looks like Minecraft. So we want to smooth out the edges a bit. So we're going to grab this vertex, press G to move it, and then we're going to move it out so that we can have a smooth oval shape. And then we're going to do it with all of these indented corners. Okay, there we go. That looks much better. So now that that side is finished, we're going to move to the other side. We have to do this side a little bit better and differently because we have to attach it to the pan. So I'm going to go back into front view with number pad 1, into wireframe mode, Z, wireframe, and then I'm going to select a little bit more this time. Okay, so I'm going to select this part where these 2 extra vertices stick out. Select them by clicking and dragging, and then do the same thing again. S, X, and 0, and enter to make it permanent. Then we have this nice square shape. What I actually want to do this time is I want to delete this part. So I'm going to go into face mode in the upper left corner, and then they're all already selected. So I'm going to press X and then faces. So I'm going to delete all of those faces. Now we have a nice handle shape. I think I'm going to make the whole thing a little bit less wide on the X axis. So SX, make it a little bit less wide. There we go. Go out of wireframe mode by pressing Z solid, and out of edit mode by pressing tab, and then we can look around and see if we like it. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we want to attach it to the pan. So the pen is still hidden, so you press Alt H to unhide the pen, and you can see the scale and the position is a little bit off. So we're going to top view with number pad 7. Click on the handle and press G to move it, and then X to move it to the side of the pen. And it's a little bit too small, so I'm going to scale it up by pressing S until it looks about right. That looks good to me. I just want to make it a little bit thinner on the y-axis because it looks a little thick. So SY, and then thin it out a bit. There we go. So that looks good, but now it still needs to move up a little. So we're going to go into front view 1, and then GZ to move it up. There we go. This part is a little bit tricky, but I'm sure you can follow along if you just focus for a moment. So I'm going to move this away so that it doesn't touch the pen, and I'm going to press GX again. There we go. So now I'm going to teach you a new command. If you go into edit mode on the pen, you can see all of these lines. Okay, so there are many lines going around and many going vertically up and down, and each of these lines is called a loop. So this loop is going on continuously. These loops don't actually go on forever because they stop at this circle, but they can still be considered as loops even though they don't continue. So if you want to add an extra loop, we press Ctrl R, and then you can see loops snap into place. And if you want to add it, we press we left click, and then we can move it around, or right click to put it in the middle. But I want to undo that. I don't want to put it right there. But what I do want to do is I want to add it where this handle is going to go into the pen. So I'm going to look at it from this weird angle right here. Now I want to add some edge loops around the places where the handle is going to fit. So Ctrl R, and I think I'm going to put one right there to see if that seems right. Yes, and then another one on the other side. Try to make it as symmetrical as possible, and then I think it'll actually fit in right there. But if yours doesn't fit as well as mine do, then you can just press Ctrl R again and then make a loop right here to make sure that your whole handle is going to fit into some squares. So now we're going to delete these faces where the handle is going to fit in. Okay, so we're going to face select mode in the upper left corner and select those faces that you want to delete, and then you press X and then faces. So there's going to be a little hole there where our handle is going to fit in well. Now we want to do something a little bit different. Go back into vertex mode, and out of edit mode we're pressing tab. We want to put both of these objects together so that we can edit them at the same time. So you press on the handle and then shift click on the pen. Now we have both of them selected at the same time. Now we want to join them together by pressing Ctrl J. Now they're part of the same object. If I move one, both move at the same time. If we're going to edit mode, both going to edit mode at the same time. That is exactly what we want. So now we're going to go into edit mode and press the edge select mode. So now you have to bear with me for a moment. We want to connect these edges to these edges right here. This isn't the best way to do it because usually you always want a shape or a face with 4 vertices. Okay, and if we do this, if we connect them together, it's going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertices, and that is really bad. But for this simple tutorial it is okay because it's a very low poly mesh and it won't give us any problems later. So select both of these edges by shift selecting them. So select one, then shift select the other one to have both at the same time. Then we shift select all of these vertices as well. Now we want to join them. In the beginning, when we had the circle, we joined the vertices together by pressing F. Now we're going to do the same thing. So press F, and then you can see we have a new face. Now we want to do the same thing with these 4 vertices. So shift select them, and this one at the side, and press F again. Then go to the bottom, do the same thing, and F again, and the other side, and F again. There we go. It wasn't so hard. The last thing I want to do is I want to put the handle in a little bit of a better position because it goes straight out at the moment and it looks a little unnatural. So I'm going to go into wireframe mode, Z wireframe. Then I'm going to select this whole handle right here. Make sure you get all of the vertices in there. Now I want to move it up a little bit. So GZ. And I want to rotate it so that it goes in a about 20 degree angle. So I'm going to press rotate and rotate it down. It looks a little weird now, but once we move it up with G, it's going to look a little bit better. I think I'm also going to scale it in a bit and then move it back out. There we go. So go out of wireframe mode by pressing Z solid, and then out of edit mode by pressing tab. And there we go, that is our finished pan. Congratulations. Welcome back. So I hope you're getting the hang of this now. So I'm going to go a little bit quicker. And if you want to see the things that I'm pressing when I'm not saying what I'm doing, you can just look at the screencast keys on the left lower side of my screen. So now we're going to make this egg, since the pan is now finished. It's not that hard and it's not going to take that long. I know the video is going on for a while now, but we're almost finished. So let's get started. Okay, so we made the pan already, and we're going to hide this again so that we can focus on the egg. So I'm going to press H, and for the egg we are going to make another sphere. So Shift A, Mesh, UV Sphere. And the same thing we did for the handle. We went into front view, and then we scaled it down on the Z axis. So SZ, and scale it down until it's really flat. So remember, this is like the egg white. So it's really flat, lying on the bottom of the pan. So we can make it about like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to add another modifier. This one is a little bit more tricky and it's a little more advanced, but for this tutorial I'm just going to explain exactly what you have to do, and then you will be able to follow along. So we're going to add another modifier in the range tab, add modifier, and then we're going to go to the displacement in deform. So click displace, and now I want to go to the option that says texture and say new. Okay, and now we can go to the texture tab right at the bottom here, this little checkerboard thing, and we already see there's a texture right here because of the new one we just created. So we're going to go to type where it says image or movie, click on that and change it to clouds. Okay, it's going to look really weird for a moment, but that's okay, we're going to fix it now. Then we go back to the modifiers tab, to the range tab. Now we can change a few things. So first of all, we have to change the strength of this because it's really high at the moment. It's at 1. So as you see, it can get even worse, or at 0, you can't see anything at all. Yes, I want mine to be at about 0.25. And now we're going to apply this. Okay, so click apply. We're not going to be able to change it again later. So apply this and then go to edit mode. It looks a little bit wonky at the moment, but that is okay because we are going to make it even worse. So we're going to top view, and I'm going to teach you another command again. So instead of just clicking on one vertex, or let's go into vertex mode, sorry. Instead of just clicking on one vertex and moving them all around individually, which is going to take forever, we are going to use something called proportional editing. So to enable that, you can either go to the top right here, to the circle with a dot in the middle, or you can just click O. Okay, so what's going to happen now, if I click on a vertex and press G, this circle appears around it. If I try to move it, you can see everything is moving along with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in the circle a little bit by scrolling with my scroll wheel or middle mouse button, and then I'm going to deform and shape the egg a bit so that it looks more runny and organic. Okay, I think that looks good. Now, when you think of an egg, where the yolk is, the whites usually come up so that it meets the edges of the yolk. So we're going to go into front view, and then with that center piece selected, center vertex, we're going to press G and Z, and we're going to move it up a bit, just like that, so that when we put the yolk on top, then it'll come up to meet it and look a little bit more realistic. So if you go out of edit mode, you can see it's a little bit jagged and not as egg looking. So we're going to add another modifier this time. So back in the modifiers tab, press add modifier, and this time we're going to use subdivision surface. This is probably the most common modifier that is used by any Blender user or any 3D modeler for that case. And what this basically does is it smooths out everything by adding lots of edge loops. So if I go into wireframe mode, you can see that it's a lot more detailed. So if I make it even more, you can see there are vertices added. But if I go into edit mode, you can see that it's not really added anything, it just smoothed it out. And that's the beauty of this modifier, is that it doesn't really change it in the actual mesh, it just looks like it does. And when you render it, it also looks like it's changing, but it really isn't, so that it doesn't slow down your computer at all. So I'm going to leave it at 1 for now. I think that looks, maybe 2. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at 2 for now. And that's it for our white. Now we're going to go on to the yolk. So we can hide this as well. And then we're going to make another shape, Shift A, Mesh, and UV Sphere. But for the yolk, we're only going to use half of this. So going to click on it, go into edit mode by pressing tab, and then we want to go back into wireframe mode so that we can see right through. Z, wireframe, and then we're going to select the bottom half of the sphere, just like that. Now we want to delete that by pressing X, and then vertices. Now we only have this top part left. So we go back into solid view, and now we want to modify this a little bit. As we did with the pan, we also want to thicken this a bit because it's not supposed to be as thin as a paper. So we go out of edit mode, go to the modifiers tab, add modifier, and use the same solidify one as we previously used. You can zoom in and see that it's thickened a little bit, but I want it to be even thicker. I think that looks good. 0.03. And we go back into edit mode, and I want to bring in the bottom a little bit. So hover over the vertex and hold in Alt and press on it. And then go into front view. And then I want to scale it in a little so that it comes in. Oh wait, just disable proportional editing by pressing O. Then I scale it in a bit. Then I Alt select the next loop and scale that in a little bit as well, so that it just gives me more of an egg yolk shape. Then I want to press A to select the whole thing, go back into front view and scale it down on the Z axis to make it a little bit flatter. That looks like a good yolk to me. So then we go out of edit mode, tab, and then we unhide the rest of the things, Alt H. We can hide the pan again. We can see the yolk is a little bit too big for the white, so we're going to scale it down by using S. Go into top view with 7, and then we want to position it at the place where the white goes up. I think mine is already, oh no it's not. So go into side view by 3. I want to move the white so that the yolk stays in the center. I'm going to press G and then move it up a bit so that the yolk is right in the middle. There we go, that looks good. There we have our egg. So if we unhide Alt-H the pan, you can see the egg is a little bit hidden there. So select the yolk and the white, GZ to move it up, and then we're going to top view and scale it up a bit so that it's a bit bigger. There we go. Position it nicely. Now we go back into front view to make sure it's at the right place on the pan so that it doesn't float. Go into wireframe mode and GZ to move it onto the bottom of the pan. There we go. And that is it for the first tutorial. So our pan and our egg is finished now. In the next tutorial we're going to give it some textures so that it'll look a lot more realistic. And I'm going to give you some homework now for the next episode. I'm quickly going to show you what I want you to make. And it's two very simple shapes, which is going to be the stove and the sink for the end result. So I'm going to quickly show you what that's going to look like. So here's a little sneak peek at our end result. And don't worry, I know it's not realistic yet, but once we add materials and render it at the end, it's going to look very lifelike. So this is just a preview. I want you to make this sink and this stove for me. Okay, so this is very simple. This is literally just a rectangle or a plane. You can find it under the Shift A mesh plane, and then you add that, and then you can extrude it up a little bit so that it is thicker. These two stove tops are just circles that are extruded to make them thicker, and then the sink is a little bit more tricky, and I'm going to leave you to try to make this yourself. It's a little bit harder, so I will show you how to do it, but I'm going to leave you with this, and then you can try it on your own, and then if you can't do it, then I'll show you how to do it in the next video. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope it's been helpful and that some of you are less daunted by all of Blender's crazy features. Watch out for next week's episode where we will dive into part 2, materials, which is personally one of my favorites. Leave a comment down below if you have anything you want me to make a video about next, or if you have any questions. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell.